Hello everyone, welcome to another intuition painting. Small paintings where I follow nothing but my intuition and I encourage you to do the same. Today we are going to paint this autumn branch with some autumn leaves. Again, I'm using my Frederick's, just a 6x6 sheet of the canvas that I've cut. And I'm going to start by giving an underpainting of yellow ochre with a lot of matte medium. Just going to loosely scrub it on there. I don't need to worry about brush stroke marks or anything. I just want to cover all of the white. The reason I'm using this color is because I thought it would be a nice contrast to the cool blue of the sky. Kind of help give it a little bit more warmth. You know, the autumn sky tends to have a lot of gold light to it. And so I thought that this would be a nice way to do that without using yellow in the sky. Now, I picked 3 colors of blue for the sky almost at random. So don't worry if you don't have any of the colors that I'm using here. Pick 3 colors of blue that you really like. I'm going to use my number 6 cloud brush, and I am using it dry because I like the way that helps kind of smoke out the paint a bit. I'm going to start with teal and white. And I'm just scumbling it on there and just looking for kind of a mottled background of a bunch of different colors. I'm not necessarily going to make clouds or try and make anything that looks like clouds. I just want a pretty blue background with variations in the tone. Now, because of the underpainting, I don't have to worry if I don't get every little speckle of the canvas covered. If some of that yellow peeks out, well, that's exactly why I put it on there. I'm not going to change or clean my brush in between colors. So there I picked up some cobalt and some white, and those 2 colors are quite different. If you can tell, the cobalt almost looks a little violet next to the teal, and the teal almost looks a little green next to the cobalt. I'm just playing around here, adding various amounts of white or no white, kind of playing with the way I apply the paint. Sometimes I scrub it a lot, side to side, around in a circle. Sometimes I just kind of dab at it like that. And let those colors play together, let them mix together a bit. So, because this is one of my intuition paintings, I knew that I wanted just kind of a close-up of a couple of autumn leaves on a branch. I didn't really know much else from that. At this point, I didn't even know how the branch was going to move. So I'm just starting with this background color of blues and just kind of letting it flow from there. And so that's really what I'd like for you to do as well. Don't be hung up on trying to make your painting look just like mine. Just picked up a little white. I want to keep the background from being too dark. I can see little bits where that yellow is still poking through in the blue, and I really like that. Yellow ochre makes a really, really nice underpainting color, especially for landscapes and scenes that are going to be very cool colored, like this cool blue sky. I feel like I could have stopped with the 2 blues. I don't know that I necessarily needed 3, especially because this is turquoise, so it's kind of a blue-green anyway. I don't feel like it made a whole lot of difference. It was pretty similar to the teal. But blues pair together really well, so don't worry about what blue it is that you're using. Just grab a few blues and start painting, start having fun. And as always, if you don't have my cloud brushes, you can either get them on my website, paintingwithjane.com, or you can use any brush that you're comfortable scrubbing with, or any technique that you like. If it's not scrubbing, do whatever it is that you like. But if you do check out my website, remember that I have a blog post for each one of the paintings that I'm doing in this little series. And that blog post has some additional information that might not be in this video, as well as a little mini critique of my own painting. And each painting from this series is also available for sale on my website. So if you're interested, check that out before somebody else does and you miss out. And I'm pretty happy with the base color that I have going on here so far. I like the variation in the colors. There's a few areas where there's some strong definition between the colors, some where they blend together, but I just want to lighten up a little bit. And because I've worked pretty quickly and my canvas is pretty small, most of this paint is still fairly wet. So I just picked up a little bit of white and I'm just kind of tapping it into there a bit. You could go all the way and make clouds, make actual clouds. For me, I felt like that's not what I wanted to do because I wanted the autumn leaves to be the focus, and I was afraid that if I made definite clouds, that would take away from the leaves. So I just kind of made the variations in color, and you can kind of interpret them as clouds that are just kind of blurry in the distance. If you find that you're having a little bit of a difficult time blending colors together while doing this, just pick up a tiny hint of whatever color it is that you're trying to blend into, and that will help. I'm just going to add a little bit of contrast to that light spot by adding a spot that's a little bit darker just opposite. But with this background, because we want the leaves to take center stage, subtle is the name of the game. You don't want these high contrasts or very, very dark or very, very light or a lot of detail and hard lines. You just want kind of a blur of color. And now I'm ready to do my branch. I'm going to use my number 3 round, and I'm mixing Payne's Gray with Raw Umber. I like the color that gives for a tree branch. I think it's better than just using straight brown. And a little extra water just to get the paint to flow better. And I'm just kind of going for it. I don't really know what kind of shape this branch is going to have, but I'm just using the very tip of the brush, kind of rolling it in my hand again, like we talked about in the last video, kind of rolling, because it takes away control and gives me more of a jagged, natural looking line for the branch. Now that I know where the branch is going to be, I can go in with a bit more control and fill it in, give it a bit more shape, widen it out where it needs to be wider. Putting a little heavier pressure there up at the top so that the branch is wider, and lighter pressure as I go to make it more narrow. Do this nice and slow. There's no reason that you have to get your tree branch all, perfect in one swoop. Take as many passes as you need to get it right. I'm now using my number 6 round, and I just picked up raw umber. I'm going to start sketching out some leaves. I wasn't even sure what kind of a shape I wanted here, so I'm just kind of messing with the shape, and I decided to just go for a kind of a standard simple almond type shape leaf. So that one was a little awkward, and doing it was a bit awkward, but now that I know what kind of a shape I want, the next ones will be pretty quick. So again, just raw umber, maybe a little bit of extra water to get the paint to flow and cover. And I'm going to kind of do the leaves in 2 halves. A nice wide tapering to a point brush stroke on one side, one on the other. Make sure they're connected in the middle. And I'm keeping them off of the branch because there's going to be a little bit of a stem coming off of the branch to the leaf. We don't want to make the leaf just be sticking straight out of the branch. But make sure it's interesting by varying the direction that your leaves are pointing, the size and shape of your leaves a bit, and even overlap some of them. Don't keep them all completely separate from each other. If you walked up to a tree and looked at a branch, you would most likely see several leaves that overlap each other. So I didn't want to get too crazy and put too many leaves on here. It's an autumn branch after all, a lot of the leaves have fallen off, but I made sure to give it at least a couple places where the leaves overlap each other. And even overlap the branch, like here. Or I ended up making it so the branch overlaps the leaf here. But either way. I like to make a few coming off of the edge of the canvas, like those 2 at the top. And I'm going to do a couple over here on the side, coming off of another branch. There we go. Now I can go back and work on the branch a bit more. I'm back to my number 3 and that Payne's Gray Brown mixture. I'm going to start really giving this branch some good shape. And I'm really sorry. I think my camera is kind of wobbling here. I wasn't paying attention to the camera. I was painting. And I think I was stepping on the power cable to my camera and it was kind of pulling it. So if you see my camera wobbling, I apologize. As I fill the branch out, I'm going to take a tiny little stem off of it and just connect it to the widest point at the back end of each leaf. Remember that if your paint is fuzzy at all, or you're having a hard time getting crisp lines or having it fill in the texture of the canvas, just get a tiny bit more water on your brush and mix that in with your paint. Painting tree bark is one of my favorite things to paint. And so I think I was more excited about painting that on this little branch than I was about painting the color of the autumn leaves. So I'll spend a few minutes painting the tree bark and getting the little highlights and lowlights on there. And hopefully that helps. I know that sometimes people have a hard time with tree bark. I have a lot of people tell me they feel like their branches just end up looking completely gray because they overwork it or whatever. But I think if you don't think about it too much, don't put too much thought behind it, and just say it needs to be lighter here, it needs to be darker there, and leave it alone, that you can be really successful at highlighting tree bark. But we will spend some time on that in just a few minutes. I'm now doing my long liner so that I can get some really delicate little ends here, whether it's the little sticky bits at the end of the branches or the little stems that go to the leaves off of the branch. And sometimes you may not be able to see where a branch is connected to a leaf or vice versa. So don't try to force that. If it feels unnatural to be able to see a stem, or you feel like you've got to stretch a stem in a weird way to show the viewer where it connects to the leaf, then don't worry about it. Just leave it. It doesn't matter. That's honestly not an important part of the painting. I'm just going to add a couple little detail twiggy bits here and there. And I need to get a stem for the two leaves on the right. So just a little bit of a branch with a couple little stems. All right, I picked up that color and then I poked into the white, still using my long liner, and I'm just starting to kind of scratch it on. Notice I am not blending. That's a really glaring, bright white line, I know, but I'm not worried about that right now. I'm just kind of placing it on bits of the branch. Notice it is not the entire branch, just scratching it on here and there, back into my dark, and then I can come back and kind of scratch out areas that were too white. I'm not trying to blend it. Don't blend. If you're blending, that's when you just get the gray mud and your branch turns gray. Think of it more like you want some highlight here, so you paint that whole part practically white. Then come back with some dark and just nudge out the parts that you don't want to be white. If you're using your paint kind of thick, you're going to pick up little bits as you go. When you have the dark paint on your brush and you go over the white, you're going to pick up a little bit of the white, and then you can take that and apply it to another part of the branch. So yeah, don't mix. See how I'm just poking into the white. I have a tiny bit, and I'm just nudging it onto a piece of the branch there. Super light pressure. So you just kind of skitter it on there. If it's too bright white, it's okay. I'm not blending it out. I'm not trying to correct it. I just come back with a little dark and just nudge it. See? That was it. Just nudge it. If it starts to blend too much, your paint is too thick, then stop. It doesn't matter if it looks horrible. Just stop. Let it dry. You can easily correct it. Don't try to blend it out. I can't stress that enough because I see it so often, and people tell me that they struggled with that so often. Just stop. I'm just taking whatever mixture I've got on my brush and just almost announcing it, if that makes sense, on a spot. All right, we're going to take a break from that for a minute. This is my number 6 filbert. It's a nice new brush, so it's not a fuzzbert. And I really have 3 random colors of orange and red. You may not have all these colors. It doesn't matter. Use what colors you have. This is cadmium orange. I also picked permanent maroon, that golden color that I used last week on the vintage flowers, and quinacridone burnt orange. But it really doesn't matter. Pick some colors that say autumn to you. What colors do you want to see in those leaves? When I was getting ready to do this, I went and pulled all of the colors that I thought I might want to use and got them ready so that they were right there when I got ready to use them. And I did bring over copper and gold, but I didn't end up using them, but you could definitely use those. Just mixed a little bit of that cad orange with the permanent maroon. And see, I'm just figuring it out right now. Just figuring out how I want to paint these leaves, where I want the colors. And so I'm just kind of variegating them. Add a little bit of orange, come back with the maroon. But at no point with any of these colors am I covering the entire leaf. The only color I covered the entire leaf with was when I did the brown underpainting. And remember that layers are your friend here. I really don't think that you can expect to just throw down a single layer of color on the leaves and think, oh, that looks great. And maybe you can. I can't. So I need a few layers. I'm going to put in some yellow oxide there. I also like to do it kind of like I did there, where some bits of that yellow oxide were really thick and heavy, and some bits were a little bit more blurred out and thin. I like the contrast there. Remember that on my blog, on my website, I will have some additional information about each of these paintings, like I said, and part of that is a little mini critique of my own painting. So on there, I'll tell you some things that I would change if I were to do it again. Some things I liked and some things that I didn't, and hopefully you can learn from kind of my critique of myself. There I picked up some of the quinacridone burnt orange. I have not cleaned off my brush. While I'm painting the leaves right here, I'm going to clean off my brush very few times. Once in a while when I know I want a very pure color, but other than that, I'm okay going from one color to the next with a dirty brush. And I also notice, for the most part, whenever I change to a new color, I'm not putting that color on every single leaf. Every leaf gets a little bit of several of the colors, but none of them get every single color. Just painting around that one because I like the branch covering it. Back to my long liner, my Payne's brown mixture. I'm going to make sure that that stem looks attached to the leaf. I'm just very lightly, if you notice my hand is planted on the canvas, I'm just very lightly scratching in the idea of the veins. I didn't want to get all crazy detailed and start drawing all of the ribs and the veins, whatever you call them, the little stripy bits inside of the leaves. I just wanted to give the suggestion of them. If you want to, dig into that, if that's a part that really calls to you, kind of like I like doing the bark on the branch. If doing the little veins really calls to you and you want to dig into that and get super detailed there, please do. Try and figure out how you would do that. What brush would you use? What technique? What colors would you use? But I'm just being very soft and light with this, and I am going to add more layers to these leaves, and so it's going to bury those veins just a little bit, which is exactly why I stopped to do them now, because I knew that I did not want them right on top of everything, because I felt like it would make them too obvious, and I really don't want them very obvious. I used a little matte medium there just to soften the color. I think for this painting, I wouldn't say that matte medium is required. You could absolutely get away without using matte medium on this painting. It's just how I like to paint. I like to use it. I feel like it makes the paint a little bit smoother. It helps me control the opacity. It makes the paint dry just a little bit slower, so I like to use it. Experimenting with a color mixture here. Got some cad orange and yellow ochre. It's a nice bright color. I'm using it kind of thin and just gonna pop some brighter bits on some of these leaves. For the most part, notice I'm keeping the color around 1/2 of the leaf. Not really filling in the whole leaf. Trying to keep it concentrated on 1/2. I wasn't afraid to go too bright with this color because the other colors I'm using I know are very transparent. The maroon and the quinacridone burnt orange, they're very transparent. So I can come back and glaze those colors over top of these brighter areas and get some really deep glowy sections on the leaves, and that seemed really exciting to me. So that's why I went ahead and did this nice bright color. You could use these exact same techniques to do, a regular, like a springtime branch with greens. Just use a bunch of different greens. Maybe warm up the color of the branch a little bit more if you wanted it to seem, spring or summertime. My branch is very dark, but maybe if you're going to use green leaves, have a very warm colored branch. Add maybe burnt sienna and use a lot of burnt sienna and just a little bit of Payne's Gray, or a mixture of red and green to really control when it turns brown, when it turns red. Just experiment and see what happens. Now this is that same mixture, the orange yellow ochre mixture, and I put a little bit of white in it, so it's a nice really bright color. Just everything felt so dark to me, and I felt like it just needed something a little brighter to make it more exciting. And usually I'm not a huge fan of white to make things brighter. It'll make things lighter, but not necessarily brighter. But in the context of what was going on in this painting, I felt like adding a little bit of white was definitely the way to go to get that brightness, and it really did. Another option would have been to add cadmium yellow, and I felt that cadmium yellow was just too lively for an autumn leaf painting. That felt too fresh and vibrant. And so I didn't think that that would give me the autumn leaf color that I was going for. So I'm really glad that I decided to experiment with this white. It's just not usually what I would do. But that's the name of the game right now. Intuition said do it, so I did it. And I'm glad I did. Back into my orange, mix it with a little bit of that maroon. I got gutsy and thought, well, it worked with the last mixture. Maybe adding a little bit of white to this mixture will give me something good, and it didn't. So this is the only time you see me add white to that mixture. I felt it just made it too chalky, so I didn't do that again. But the orange maroon mixture is really nice, so I kept using that. And remember, last week with the flowers, I said that if your dark isn't dark enough, add some light. If your light isn't light enough, add some dark. And look at, since I added those light colors to half of the leaves, look how dark the other half of the leaf looks. Really, really dark. But it didn't look that dark until I added the light. So I felt that that made it much more dynamic than, just keeping it all about the same tone. Even though they are bright, vivid colors, nothing stood out because they were all about the same value. And you can really go back and forth on these layers as much as you want. I'm going to do a little glazing with some of this maroon in a few spots and get a little bit of those dark, vibrant colors, the maroon and the quinacridone, back in. And that's about all I'm going to do for now. This definitely feels like a painting that I'd like to revisit and put more time and energy into. I really had a good time with this one. The colors are super pleasing to me. The opportunity to do the layering, the branch, of course, something that I always like to do. So I really had a lot of fun with this painting. I love that little leaf right on the end. Looks like it's about to about to go. At any moment, it's going to fall off. Back into the quinacridone burnt orange. Very similar to the maroon, but when they're side by side, there's just enough difference to make it interesting. Back to the long liner and the Payne's brown mixture. A little bit of extra water. Whenever you're using the long liner, use just a tiny bit extra water. Another little point of white, and I'm just gonna make sure that all the little interesting bits on the branch have a bit of a highlight on them. Even bring it down some of the stems a little bit. But like I said last week with the flowers, the technique I was using to do the flowers, this that I'm highlighting the branch with, it's actually a very similar technique. It's really the same thing, you know, kind of wiping on, letting one part of it be a sharp edge and let one edge of it be a soft edge, and that kind of gets that blurry, assimilated look. Just like the ghost, just like the flowers. It's just a different brush, different colors, and I'm moving the brush in a different direction, but it's all very, very similar. And now I'm back to just the Payne's brown mixture. A little bit of extra water. I'm going to zoom you in here a bit, and we are just going to scratch. I want you to see how very lightly I'm doing this. I'm just ever so lightly scratching in a few suggestions of the spine and the veins of these leaves. Mostly what I'm doing is making sure that the connection from the stem to the leaf is nice and solid to really make it look like that leaf is connected to that stem. Sometimes paint comes off when I'm scratching into the leaf. Sometimes it doesn't. Whatever happens, I let happen. Just a couple little, like little stringy hairline branches. So we're going to get a couple of those in there too. See here, I'm going to kind of make that connection point a little more substantial. And scratch that in ever so lightly. Don't put a big fat black line down the center of the leaf. It's going to look real strange. Your brain knows it's a leaf attached to a stem. You don't have to give it all of the, all of the anatomy and really spell it all out. It's just gonna be cluttered. But I think these little scratchy bits were just enough suggestion to sell it. Just added a bit of a shadow where those two leaves overlap. And I like the dark edge there at the base. If while you're going you feel like you added too stark of a line, too hard of a black line down the center, just come back and put another one of your leaf colors over it. Just swipe it over once. You don't have to obliterate the line. Just to knock it back a little will be perfectly fine. That's all you need. And there's really not a lot left to this painting. That's really about it. I'm super happy with the way it turned out, and I had a great time with it, and I hope that you do too. And I would like to say thank you so much to my awesome sponsor, Frederick's. If you haven't tried out their canvases, you really should. There's a link in the video description to where you can get yours. Again, I like to use the canvas pads because I can cut them into whatever shape and size I need at the moment, which is really super convenient for me. And as always, I would like to say thank you to all of you for hanging out with me and painting along and chatting with me. It really means a lot to me. Don't forget to check out the blog post for this painting on my website, and I hope to see you again very soon.